Every team on the F1 grid is fighting two championships in 2026, the one you watch on Sundays, and the invisible one that happens in spreadsheets, accounting departments, and FIA audit rooms throughout the year. That second championship has a number attached to it: $215 million. That is what each team is allowed to spend in 2026, and the gap between how different teams spend that money, which engineers they hire, which parts they develop, which corners they cut and which they do not, is quietly determining the results you see on track every single weekend. But here is the thing most people do not realize. That $215 million is not what it sounds like, and the war being fought over it is not the one you think it is. Let's start at the beginning, because the cost cap is one of those topics where the headline number does almost everything wrong, and understanding it properly changes how you read the championship entirely. Formula One introduced the cost cap in 2021 because the sport had a serious problem. Teams with unlimited budgets were simply buying championships. Mercedes spent over $400 million a year during their dominant run. Red Bull and Ferrari were not far behind. The smaller teams, Haas, Williams, AlphaTauri, were operating at a fraction of that. They were not competing for the same championship. They were competing in a completely different sport that happened to share the same circuit. The cost cap was the solution. It started at $145 million in 2021, dropped to $140 million in 2022, settled at $135 million from 2023 through 2025. And for 2026, it jumped to $215 million, an $80 million increase that sounds enormous, and immediately prompted questions about whether F1 had simply abandoned the whole point of the exercise. It had not. The increase is almost entirely an illusion, and understanding why is the first thing you need to know about how this cap actually works. The $215 million figure looks massive because it is being compared to the old $135 million figure. But those two numbers are not measuring the same things. The 2026 cap has brought a large number of previously excluded costs inside the perimeter. Items that were always being spent, they just were not being counted. The most significant change is the capital expenditure cap. Previously, teams had a separate $36 million allowance over 4 years for facility investment, new wind tunnels, new simulators, new factory equipment. That separate cap has been scrapped. The annual depreciation from those investments now counts inside the main cap instead. That alone pushes the headline number up significantly without a single extra dollar being spent. Staff allocation rules have also been tightened. Previously, if an engineer worked 80% on F1 and 20% on other projects, only 80% of their salary counted against the cap. From 2026, if any of your time touches an F1 project, 100% of your cost goes into the cap. Teams with large organizations suddenly found their effective spending inside the cap jumping dramatically, not because they hired new people, but because the accounting rules changed around the people they already had. So the $215 million cap is not $80 million more than the old cap. It is closer to a neutral adjustment dressed up in a bigger number. The FIA said this explicitly. The teams understood it. The real war is not about the total number. It is about what falls inside it, what falls outside it, and how you prove the difference. When the FIA first drafted the 2026 financial regulations, they envisioned a clean set of exclusions. 5 or 6 items that were genuinely outside the scope of car performance: driver salaries, marketing, the 3 highest paid staff members, legal and HR costs. Simple, auditable, hard to exploit. What actually ended up in the rulebook was 20 to 25 exclusions. Every extra carve-out came from negotiations with teams who argued, often persuasively, that certain costs genuinely should not count. Health and safety costs were excluded. Catering costs at factory and races were excluded. Sustainable fuel development costs were excluded. Heritage car programs were excluded. Each individual exclusion is defensible on its own terms. Collectively, they represent a set of escape hatches that sophisticated teams with large legal and accounting departments are far better equipped to navigate than smaller teams with fewer resources. The gap that the cost cap was designed to close starts reopening the moment the list of exclusions grows long enough to become a strategic tool rather than a practical accommodation. Adrian Newey, perhaps the most celebrated designer in F1 history, warned before leaving Red Bull that capped engineering salaries were already driving the sport's best technical minds toward aerospace and defense. sectors, where the pay is higher and the hours are more predictable. If the cap suppresses wages, while teams find ways to spend the same money on carbon fiber and simulation time instead of people, it has failed its own logic. The enforcement history of the cap tells its own story. Red Bull exceeded the 2021 cap by $2.6 million, a minor overspend by percentage, but politically explosive because it happened in the year Verstappen won his first title. The penalty was a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in aerodynamic testing time for the 2023 season. Critics felt it was too lenient. Red Bull felt they had done nothing that every other team was not also doing at the margins. Aston Martin and Williams both committed procedural breaches in 2021 related to paperwork filing, not overspending, just administrative errors. Aston Martin paid $562,000. Williams paid $20,000. Both accepted the findings without contest. The point is not that teams are cheating. The point is that the complexity of F1's financial regulations, when combined with the legitimate ambiguity of cost allocation across departments that serve both F1 and non-F1 purposes, makes compliance genuinely difficult to verify and even harder to enforce consistently. The cost cap administration reviews take months. Findings from one season are sometimes not published until well into the following year. By the time anyone is penalized, the competitive outcome has already been decided. The 2026 cap also includes a separate $190 million limit specifically for power unit development. This runs entirely in parallel with the chassis cap, not overlapping, not sharing categories. A team like Mercedes is essentially operating under two independent cost ceilings simultaneously. The engine cap was introduced to make the economics of building a competitive power unit manageable for new manufacturers. It was a key factor in Honda's return, Ford's partnership with Red Bull, Audi's entry, and Cadillac's arrival. For teams that fall significantly below the performance benchmark with their power units, the ADUO mechanism kicks in. ADUO, additional development and upgrade opportunities, gives underperforming manufacturers extra development, freedom, and financial allowances to close the gap. Ferrari's engine was judged more than 4% below the Mercedes benchmark earlier this season. That triggered ADUO relief. Ferrari has already used one moderate upgrade. The larger turbocharger redesign they have been building in Maranello is the real use of that freedom, and it is coming after the summer break. James Vowles at Williams said it plainly. We're going to have to be creative to stay competitive in 2026. It's not about willpower, it's about available resources. A team hitting the cap in January because they have the money to spend it is in a completely different position from a team hitting the cap in October because they ran out. The $215 million cost cap is not the story. It never was. The story is what happens inside that number, how teams allocate it, how they account for it, how the FIA audits it, and how sophisticated organizations find legitimate ways to maximize every dollar, while smaller teams struggle to keep pace with the same rulebook. Right now, Mercedes is winning the war on track. Their championship lead is real, and Antonelli's advantage over Russell reflects a car that is genuinely faster in race conditions. But Ferrari's ADUO relief, their Madrid filming day data advantage, and the turbocharger upgrade sitting in Maranello represent a second war being fought entirely off the track in development labs, financial reports, and technical meetings that happen far from any grandstand. The $215 million war does not end when the checkered flag falls at Abu Dhabi. The FIA's cost cap administration will still be reviewing submissions months after the season is over. Championships have been won on Sundays in F1. They have also increasingly been won in accounting rooms on Tuesdays. Do you think the cost cap is making F1 fairer, or have the loopholes and exclusions already undermined the whole point of it? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more F1 analysis like this, hit subscribe.